want 100% unanimous consent among y'all to have discussions on the side, you know, in our cloaked back room, you know, whatever, smoky back room, without the live stream going because it's not official, and just discuss some of the language. That way, when Scott gets back, someone can motion to, hey, we have this new language, let's work on it from there. Is everybody fine with that? Working in an unofficial capacity until Scott gets back? Okay. So all right, let me get set up. See me?
Are y'all ready?
Yes. Okay. All right. So this is just for the live stream's edification. We're not doing anything official right now. Before we pass anything, we're going to wait for Scott to get back. Yep. We're just going to work on language amongst ourselves, things that we've been doing for the last day and a half anyway.
Michael, we were going to pray.
Edification.
We're going to pray first.
Michael, we're going to pray. Michael, are you going to let us?
use the wording in green as the basis for the sale of Texas land priority. Is there a second? That has been seconded. So going in discussion, let's just read this and see how it sounds. Because I like what I see. Texas should ban the sale of Texas land to governments and entities from China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia, or to individuals from these nations who are not legal permanent residents or citizens of the United States. So before we get into commas and ands and ors and all that, is everything we want there?
Almost.
Okay.
Almost.
All right. I'll start with you.
Genera. Okay.
Genera, yeah.
SD 27. The word I would like to see in here somewhere is or their proxies. So in other words, not just the government, not just the entities themselves, but you can have American representatives purchasing on their behalf.
Okay. Do we want to? I would think that would go after governments and entities. Yeah. So after and Russia.
Or the individuals from these nations, even. So. Both places. So. I guess, yeah, at the end's good because it covers everybody.
Okay. Do we also want to? Okay. Sorry, I'm getting caught up mentally. Okay. So that motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on that? Do we want or their proxies twice? Okay. I think we just want the first instance, right?
Or the last one.
Okay.
The first one's fine.
Okay.
Just
All right.
point of information.
State your point.
Could you just explain how we would exclude people who are not legal residents? I mean, what do you foresee as being that process?
Okay. Microphone.
I think this is unconstitutional, but at the same time, everybody appreciates the sentiment, and I think you should lead that paragraph with, to the maximum degree legally possible, Texas shall ban. And I'd
No,
be
that's
comfortable with that, because it tells them, we know there may be a problem with it, but we want you to do absolutely everything you can. But I'd hate to tell them something that most likely we know is illegal.
I think that's out of order until we've gotten through this amendment. Right now, we're just looking at the language or their proxies. So, Gennaro, would you like to speak to that?
Okay, or their proxies is because there are people who do their work for them who you know, you would not assume are purchasing for any of these countries. And I do know, just a little FYI, that there are other states who have passed this or similar to it.
Point of inquiry.
State your point.
How come, I have the document up, but how come I can't see the green writing on my page? Because I have very.
Microphone. Microphone. You have to speak louder.
Sounds like a tech issue. I got you.
Yeah, the document you should be in is live documents and minutes. So it is a very long document that we're kind of at the bottom of.
And I've tried closing it. I have the internet. I've tried closing it, going back to.
Yeah, so if you're in the, yeah, if you're in the, oh, am I actually like clicking on that? See, oh, there we go. If you're in the document that's called Legislative Priorities Committee, live documents and minutes.
We're in that document.
Yes.
And I can see you moving, but I can't see the green text.
You should, because you're probably not on the right page. You should be on.
I can see your cursor moving.
Yeah, you should be on page 26. Are you there?
Yep.
Here I am. Yeah. I'm there. The problem is I can't see that.
There you go.
Yep.
Got it now.
Okay.
Well, it came and then went.
Yeah. I think you're probably not going to be able to see the different colors because I can't see, like it looks like the top looks red and the language we're looking at looks purple to me, but I see the highlighted area. Spencer.
I don't see the green at all.
Well, it's a color sheet. I'm about to see if I can fix this.
Yeah, just clarifying that I cannot see that text that we're working on at all. It was there for a second and then went away.
Does it not show up in the document until you approve the change? Okay.
No, it's there, it's just the color issue.
I don't think it's a good idea to give
Because
edit access to everybody.
No, because he's got it on like an edit, like, so it's not, he hasn't submitted.
Yeah, I think what the issue is there's some editor mode that you were using that they can't see it until you finalize the changes. So.
Yeah, we can do it.
All right, so we're still on or their proxies. Is there any further discussion on this item? Spencer, then Christy, then Jeff.
I just think that we need to move the or their proxies to where it says or to individuals, but or their proxies after individuals. It would make more sense there.
I support that friendly amendment.
Okay. Is there any objection to moving that to make it say or to individuals or their proxies? So we'd move that language. All right, no objections, so go ahead and move that over, although we still haven't voted on the underlying amendment. Is there any further discussion on the underlying amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you talking about the whole
raise
thing?
your hand if you want to be recognized. Okay, Christy.
Can you clarify exactly what we're doing? Because I didn't have access to the document whenever the motion started being made.
Right now, we're just
Okay.
doing the amendment to add a little proxies.
Okay. Did I miss the amendment to remove the part about taxpayer funds?
No, we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
We're just,
So that's still in there, you just haven't drafted that into the language?
well, we haven't gotten to that point yet.
Then I don't have a.
Okay. Okay, you should be looking at the text in black is the main motion. The text highlighted in yellow is the current wording of the amendment. Dr. Malati.
Just a thing about the proxies, where it's stated, it could mean that the proxies are also not legal permanent residents, but we know the proxies might be. So I think we actually have to put it in two places, entities or proxies, or, the individuals from these nations who are not legal permanent residents or citizens, or their proxies.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and vote on just like the substance of or their proxies now. And then I think once we've got that in there, everyone kind of understands that applies to everybody, and we'll rearrange it so that it's more of a collective thought. Jeff?
I do have a question on the substance of the amendment itself, not just its placement. So I just want to make sure that we're saying this correctly, because if we're saying they're a proxy, that they have to be acting in that capacity, because there are U.S. citizens who are working for
Yes.
companies that are from China that are
Yes.
not, there's nothing, sometimes, there's at least some that are not doing anything suspicious or wrong. They just work for a company that has ownership in China, and they are if they try to buy a house for themselves, would this exclude them from being able to buy property as a U.S. citizen?
I don't
Right?
think
Like,
so.
just making sure that we're not doing that.
When you're a proxy, you're not a proxy 24/7. You're
Correct.
just one
Okay.
when you're wearing
Acting in
when you're
that
wearing your
capacity.
company's hat, right?
Just making sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
Brett.
So I would recommend, because like, for example, we heard that fantastic testimony about the lady who lives now down in Cleveland.
Yes.
Anyway, Mexico, right? Here's the issue. We've got 4 nations up here, but in a year there could be 5 more, who knows? So what if we had hostile nations or actors?
Yes, because it could be more.
Or
Loretta.
I was going to address that very issue, and I was thinking before we added the proxy statement, when it was up higher, we could have changed from these nations to from individuals from any nation, take the S off, who are not legal permanent residents, and it would address the colonias that are happening all over the state.
Yeah, and by the way,
Because they're bringing in these illegals, selling them these properties,
Right.
and then foreclosing on them and reselling them over and over
yeah,
and
so
over.
let me
to
mention the
people
reason why
coming.
I said hostile nations and actors. So Mexico isn't necessarily a hostile nation, but the cartels are. They would be the hostile actors.
They're not the only countries.
I totally get that. So if we leave it so that it's something that can be defined on the go, so to speak, hostile nations and actors, then that covers both hostile countries and hostile actors like cartels.
Sorry. Here's what makes me a little nervous about that is we need to be careful that we're not drawing the circle too big because, like for instance, it's kind of tempting the idea of not allowing people who are illegal immigrants to own property. But what is really the legal difference between someone who is a foreign national here illegally and someone who is a foreign national in their own country? I mean, if there is a British actor who wanted to buy a Hollywood vacation home or something like that, but the Texas version of that, then, I mean, we wouldn't want to ban that. We're just trying to ban hostile nations from buying up property in Texas the way they have been, especially around military bases.
Right.
So,
Right. While there are some hostile Brits, I don't think we really worry about them.
yeah.
We're just trying to include the problem with the colonias that is happening somehow in this.
Yeah, and that's what, because, I mean, if you remember, that issue got a ton of attention very quickly, and then and there was even a special session called where they started looking at it, and when they started looking at it, it became very hard to actually figure out how do you pass a bill against what is happening here, because there's nothing illegal right now about an illegal immigrant buying property. Because if they weren't an illegal immigrant, they were just at home in wherever they came from, and they just bought the property, they would be able to do that as a foreigner, provided they weren't from a hostile nation. So that sounds like a challenge to me. How do you draw that distinction to prevent what is happening in Colony Ridge without throwing the baby out with the bathwater and making it hard for legitimate buyers who are foreign to buy? But anyway, we've got Rhonda, Genera, and then Jeff.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Just a little history on this information, I guess is what I'd say. China bought up the Devil's River in our area, and they wanted to put in wind farms. And so that's where you started, I think this whole thing started. And then they started looking at, and they were sold by a real estate guy to an American who flew them over all that area. And so that was the beginning of China taking over. Right next to it, we have a military base, right? And so Valverde fought this, and this is that's why China's on that list. And they've bought up Kyle. I don't know how much y'all know about all of that, but because of that, there's a lot of information about what all China has bought. They're buying out our country.
All right, I think it was Genera.
Right. Although I did want to include hostile nations, I think if we narrowed it, I mean, the nice thing about the hostile nations is it takes us into the future. But one of the reasons we're doing this is not just for colonias, but also primarily because of the military bases. Thank you.
Jeff.
Sorry, just addressing the question on the colonias question and tying in with this. I very much want to address the issue on the colonias. But after, like you said, during that special session, there was a lot of attention on this topic, and you're right that the question of if they were just a Mexican national in Mexico, they have the right to buy land where they will, and someone who owns property has a right to sell it to somebody else. The issue isn't that the people who are Mexican citizens own the land, really truly. The issue is they own the land and they're living on it while not a legal resident. Right? It's what they're using the land for, and there's a lot of issues with the practices that are being used to sell it and market it to them. But that's not this. That's not the same issue as this. It is an issue that needs to be addressed, and there's a lot of issues with like minimum licensing levels that need to be addressed with that. But it is not this issue specifically of foreign entities buying land in Texas for nefarious, like larger scale threat purposes. You mentioned Valverde. In Williamson County, we have found like a large number of Chinese companies trying to buy up land that overlooks Fort Hood, right? And like large swaths of it. And in really disturbing manners that they're really just information gathering about the people that own the land, right? There's so much going on with that, right? So like when I think about those two issues, they're both very important. I want to tackle the Colony Ridge thing very badly, but it is not this issue. This is a unique national security issue that is different in that way.
Thank you. Teresa.
I just want to echo that. They bought the land around Pantex, the nuclear area in Amarillo. They have got wind farms everywhere. When you drive past it, the wind, they're in the grid. But what's interesting is the ones directly next to Pantex, those big turbines, they're facing a different direction than all the other turbines in the area. So I agree. It was Representative Hugh that really fought against this last legislation, and he hit us hard with we were just trying to take their homes of the Chinese community. So I think we have to possibly consider wording this carefully so that our legislatures can work on it.
Yeah, and shout out for the first mention of Pantex. Peyton.
Scott, all this really, you guys ought to look at this under the auspices of that Rule 44, because this is an absolute demand that you do something that is going to have some serious legal problems with it, and the degree that they can't do some of this because we've been so specific in this way, we create a serious problem for our legislators, and that's why I'm saying you need to lead this with something to the effect that says, to the maximum degree legally possible, Texas shall ban. You got to have that caveat, or you really put our guys under a problem.
Having been through many censure processes and presented them to the SREC, I don't think that's accurate. I mean, if you're really looking at Rule 44, if a legislator and the legislature tried their hardest to pass a bill that addressed the priority and then later on a court found it unconstitutional, there's no way we would be able to censure them on that. Just realistically, like it's for, yeah.
Or even just not passing it.
Right. It is for, like, now if they voted against it, then that would be different. But I really, like, I think to the maximum extent legally possible is implied in all of these. So,
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Say your point.
I believe that we're supposed to be talking about or their proxies.
That's
and we're
correct.
discussing a lot of other
Is
stuff.
there any further debate on or their proxies? Hearing none, we'll move into a vote. All in favor of adding this language, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. That passes.
Should there be a comma after proxy?
Probably. I don't want to get there quite yet, though. Is there anything else kind of substantive in this, Hans?
I think we were talking about it. We were really trying to force two things into one. And I would say that we should either pick the top or the bottom. You know, the Colony Ridge issue is at the bottom. Or we just stop the sale of the land to the foreign entities. But I think we're going to have to come up to a vote on that.
Go on.
So I'm just curious how this would work. Does this mean from this point forward, no more land sold to China, or land that China already owns? Are we going to forcibly dispossess them of that, or are they grandfathered in? Do we want to address that in the language?
It is ban the sale, so we can't ex post facto ban it. Spencer.
I would like to make an amendment to add to ban the sale or lease of Texas land.
Yeah, bravo.
All right, that motion, has that been seconded? Sounds like it.
I'm sorry.
All right.
I said bravo, but.
Yeah. Is there any discussion on that? So I'll argue against that because there are Chinese companies and I have to assume Russian companies too, maybe not North Korean or Iranian, who do lease property. I mean, if you're renting a factory, if you're renting a work site, then you are leasing property in Texas. You don't own it, but you're leasing it to operate. And there are companies that do that. And so I don't know that we want to put people out of business
Yes, sir, you did say this would not be retro, so I think the people who are here now that we really like are just fine, but maybe we should consider not leasing land in the future to hostile nations like this.
Okay, so so would everybody who comes up for a lease renewal have to cancel their lease and leave?
I don't think so. I mean, it's up to the...
I think it would under this language. I think, Jeff?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think putting the or lease in there gets to be very tricky. I think what we're looking for is control, and that control aspect of particularly critical things, farmland or strategically located things being controlled by that. If it's still under U.S. ownership or whatever, there are other ways to probably address that we have currently available to us.
All right. Loretta and then Janera.
I'm concerned about leasing land and putting a wind farm on it, and then controlling the electric grid. So I support it.
All right, Janera?
I also want to say that when you lease land, you do control it. You absolutely control it. It is the terms of the lease are between you and the owner, but we don't want to get into that. Leasing land does give you full control. If you're leasing in a town, for instance, and your yard is bad, they will come after you, not the owner. Thank you.
All right. Can we get the? All right. Is there any further discussion on that topic? Peyton.
Do you all understand there's a difference between land and property? Are you talking about truly, because land is land, which is dirt with nothing on it. If you go to court with somebody, land is land. And if you're talking about property like buildings and stuff like that, or maybe a structure or facility, you're going to have to change the language.
Right, but so structures are on land. So if you are leasing a facility, that's going to be on land, which could be argued to be fall under this, right? I don't know. I think adding this in has a lot of unintended consequences that the legislators who are trying to put forward language on this already probably haven't run the traps on. Jeff, you want to debate?
A quick note on that. You mentioned the buying land, leasing land, putting a windmill on it, and having access to the grid. I'm trying to pull this back in my memory, and I will look it up and do a little more digging to this. But I believe that was actually addressed on the question of who has access to the grid. That was addressed in the last legislative session in one of the Senate bills, making sure that those who have access to putting stuff on the power grid are not from hostile nations or working on their behalf. So I think that's already been covered as far as grid access. So, but I will get some more information on that.
Yeah. Is there any further debate on this amendment? All right. Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor of adding the words "or lease," say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
That fails. Michael.
Sorry. While I work on this, I move to change the word "should" to "shall."
I couldn't hear him.
I move to change the word "should" to "shall."
So a motion has been made to change "should" to "shall." As a point of information, I'll get to you in a sec. I'll point out that in our previous priorities that have used either word, we've used "should." So that this would, we have, and actually,
It shouldn't be either word. It should be
really the entire thing should be taken out. It should be, it should start with the word "ban," I would think, if we're really trying to follow the style of the other language. But
Since I didn't hear mine seconded, I'm fine with, I'll move to remove the word "should."
okay, and Texas.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Is there a second on that? So we would start with the word "ban." That's been seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of that amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. All right.
Motion. I move to remove from end at Russia and remove or to individuals or their, right after proxies from these nations, period, remove who are not legal permanent residents or citizens of the United States.
All right, that motion has been made. Is there a second? I don't hear a second. Are there, okay, so looking at the commas and the ands, if we can get that back up, can at least most of y'all see this on the screen while we work on getting the projector done? So commas and ands. Is there any objection to removing the comma between governments and entities?
No.
Hearing none, let's go ahead and, I'll just go ahead and do it while Michael works on that. Is there any, okay, so, ban the governments or to individuals or their proxies from these nations. I think that's it. Are there any other, Jeff?
Sorry. On the, I do have a motion on the, I know we've been messing around with the, or their proxies, we were talking about the substance, but in the grammar side of it, it probably should be ban the sale of Texas land to governments and entities from China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia, comma, their proxies, comma, or individuals from these nations, because the proxies technically are the proxies of the individuals from the way it reads here. The individuals, their proxies, who do not live, right, so, yeah, yeah.
What if we just, yeah, so you would go their proxies or to individuals from these nations who are not legal permanent residents.
Correct.
Yeah. So that, the only problem there is that would technically allow proxies of the individuals.
No, I'm just saying it doesn't, yeah, it's only covering one set of proxies.
Yeah.
Right, so.
But, yay. Okay, so that's been seconded. Let's make that change and see how it looks. And then, so I think we may be able to adopt that, but that might not be the end of it. Dr. Malati.
I just have a question. And we don't have to even go into this. I was just wondering, is the main issue kind of the amount that people buy, like they're buying acres and acres versus like a small storefront? If they were like a little company having a storefront, you know what I'm saying? Like, are we really trying to ban every type of like size of land and property?
I mean, a small storefront with like right next to Fort Hood that has a bunch of radio and satellite equipment.
No,
in it,
of course.
You know, so, but. Yeah, so the motion is to move or their proxy. Okay, so we would say entities from China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia, comma, their proxies, comma, or to individuals from these nations who are not legal permanent residents or citizens of the United States. Or to individuals goes there, you would take out or to individuals up there. And then you would also take out or. So it would be comma, their Russia, comma, their proxies, comma, or.
No, that's not right.
Eric?
Yeah, that's not right. Russia or to individuals from these nations or their proxies. Otherwise, you're limiting proxies to being from those nations. So grammatically, North Korea and Russia, or to individuals from these nations or their proxies.
I also have a suggestion.
All right, let's dispense
Since I had
with
it as a
this.
motion, can I just amend the motion then?
Sure.
So I had it as a motion. So my amending of that motion would be to put it at, to put the proxies at the very end, or any proxies of the above. Right, so don't put, no mention of proxies until the very end. Citizen of the United States, comma, or any proxies of the above.
That's fair.
Is that seconded?
Second.
Okay. Yeah, and you would take out the or their proxies. And
Point of information, Mr. Chairman.
state your point. Who is that?
Spencer.
Go ahead.
This reads to me like it's a proxy of the United States now, and so I think that we still don't have it right.
Yeah.
I do have a suggestion, if you just.
Yes.
Please, sir. Ban the sale of Texas land to governments, comma, entities, and proxies from China, Iran, North Korea, yada, yada. Just put it in the beginning. Thank you.
Okay. Is that seconded? Yes. Okay. Let's make that the amendment. Okay. Did you want to say proxies from or proxies of? Yeah. Okay, so proxies of? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Mhm. Okay. Is there?
To make too at some point.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and deal with this first. Is there any further discussion on this amendment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. All right, that passes. We'll go to Christy next.
I'd like, at some point, I want to make a motion to discuss the taxpayer funding, but at the moment, I want to propose that we change Texas land to real estate located in Texas.
Okay, so I'll just ask the question, and that motion is there a second?
Just Texas real estate.
Is there a second? All right, that's been seconded. Do you want to speak to the reasoning for that?
What was mentioned earlier about buildings, you can actually own a building and not own the land it's situated on, for one thing. But it just seems to be more inclusive of what we're trying to accomplish here. So, I mean, they could put a portable building on a piece of land owned by a U.S. citizen, whether there's a lease or not, and put potentially, hazardous operations in that building. A building is real estate. It's not land.
Brady.
So I'll ask a question with the intent to potentially offer an amendment to change that to real property as opposed to real estate, ban the sale of real property in Texas.
I'm not opposed to that.
I'll offer an amendment to the amendment to change it to real property.
All right, is there any objection to that?
No objection, but that would be much better because that also includes the air rights above the land, which is important.
Okay.
Nice.
All right, so I'll okay, any objection to the blue highlighted change? Hearing none? Okay, we'll go ahead and do that, but we still have an amendment. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Jeff?
I'd just like to point out, thank you, is this also disambiguates. Texas is not just a location, it's also a government. So it disambiguates this from being land owned by the state of Texas. This is real property in Texas is a very, very good change. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. All right, any further discussion on this amendment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. That passes. Brett.
So I brought up hostile nations earlier. I'm just going to argue for that and make a motion for it. Part of the reason why is somebody mentioned Gene Wu earlier, I think. Anyway, Gene Wu used this whole thing to say, oh, you're racist against Chinese. And that was his whole argument against this. Anyway, if we just say hostile nations and actors, or whatever wording we come up with, then, that kind of erases that. The only question then is how do you define a hostile nation?
See, that's the problem, is when you list out the countries, that's real specific, and it's very, like, you can't You can't dodge it. You can't have a legislator who's, I don't know, getting funding from China somehow, saying, oh, China's not a hostile nation. We trade with them all the time. You know, like when you, I think if you make it less specific, you make it more arguable, and it makes it very hard to enforce.
Then I don't have a motion to submit at all.
Okay. Yeah. It would be kind of fun. I'm not going to make a motion to add Azerbaijan into this list. Some of you all get that. Spencer.
So just to answer the question of how do you define that, the State Department has a list of hostile nations and actors, and that's a very good resource for that.
Okay.
Because that would also include Hamas and a bunch of other terrorist organizations as well. So,
Guys, we're like 5 priorities from now, we're going to have a discussion about letting Texas be Texas and not using federal government, objecting to federal government regulations. So I agree with the spirit of that, but I don't know if we want the State Department running our land sale policy.
I will say, only because we are choosing to use that list, right?
Yeah.
That's different from doing it because we are choosing to use the list because we find it to be a good and useful mechanism versus we have to use it because they made us.
Right.
Like, we're still making the choice.
Yeah. I think Texas should probably have its own hostile nations list if we want to do that. I'll go with Janera, then back to Spencer.
Okay, real quick, I understand the concept of the list. However, we are not always in agreement with the federal government, who's all buddies with China right now, over who belongs on that list. Thank you.
Spencer.
I was just going to jokingly say we could add the state of California on.
Oh, wait. Never mind.
Are there any other okay. Any other amendments to this language or discussion?
I'd like to move to discuss the taxpayer funding.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay. So, is there language you'd like to add?
The problem is not just real property. The EDCs are funding these entities, funding them, giving them funding to not only buy land, but also establish businesses or organizations here, mostly businesses. You know, that's taxpayer money collected through sales tax, funneled down to the cities, and then the cities use it to try to boost economic activity in their city. And a lot of these leads are coming from the state, from what I've been told by a gentleman who is well-versed in the economic development field. And I just don't think it's right. One, you know, for the military, for the reasons stated that we don't want them buying land here for military and defense purposes, we also certainly don't want our taxpayer dollars going to pay for that. There's no reason for that when there are plenty of American citizens who would be happy to receive those taxpayer funds for economic development reasons. So I would make a motion that we somehow incorporate that. I don't have the exact language. I'm open to suggestion on that.
Because that's broad in the right way.
Should it be discontinue or prohibit?
Prohibit.
That's not updating here for, let's see, fantasy. Oh, okay.
Okay. And I think we would have to make this an and also. Though I don't know what I'm doing.
I like it.
I'm just typing. Okay.
I like it.
I think we have to change both of these to and, like when you phrase it that way. So here is the language I would suggest. Would you like to move adoption? Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Would that include the issuing of tax abatements?
Funding and abatement. Yeah, but abatements, they're not giving money, they're.
Technically no motion has been made.
How about
so-
taxpayer incentives or funding.
Oh, that's not. Or just incentive?
That's what the economic development industry refers to it as.
That's what the economic development people are pushing, the abatements to these entities.
I think you use "and" for all of it, because all of it is happening and all of it needs to stop. So, does this language capture your intent?
Yes.
Hey, would you like to make the motion?
Yes, I make a motion that we adopt that language.
All right, and there's a second from Spencer. Is there any further discussion on this language? Dan Tully.
My concern with this language, and having been a former EDC board member for 5 years, is that if they were dealing with China, Russia, or anything like that, trying to buy land, doing incentives or whatever as part of the actual EDC, they would also be a proxy. So therefore, they're already prohibited from dealing with it, because they would be acting as a proxy to do that. They're not allowed to do anything.
No,
with it.
I think proxies are more like straw buyers, right? In fact, I almost like that language a little
Well,
bit
that's
better.
the situation. A lot of times, these EDCs actually own the land, they're selling it to them. They have the dirt, they're selling it to them.
Well, that's not good either. So, but do you object to the language here, though?
I understand it, but I just...
Genera.
I'm sorry, are we just addressing the yellow parts?
Yes.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay. Paul.
Are we trying to shoehorn in the Colony Ridge issue here? Is that what this is?
No. This is more about Chinese company wants to buy 1,000 acres in, Needville. And so the Needville Economic Development Corporation gives them taxpayer incentives to buy the land with.
But if we ban the sale of it to them, it doesn't matter if there's an incentive or not.
Or they give them a tax incentive to open a factory there or something like that. If someone's the way I think the way you look at it and the way I would look at it too is if someone's a hostile nation, they're a hostile nation. If we won't sell them land, why would we give them money?
Exactly.
Yeah. It makes sense to me. But I know, Peyton, you had your hand raised?
Point of information.
Say your point.
If we don't understand this, are you going to go with this amendment to explain to the legislature what we actually meant?
I think it's pretty clear.
It's not clear to some of us. You're having to explain it to us, and I'm not trying to be ugly. It's a serious thing. You're having to explain what you think it means and the effect of it all. And if we don't grasp it, then somebody's going to have to explain it to them, because I don't think they're going to understand exactly what it meant either. What they're obligated to do.
Is there any further discussion on this amendment? All right, seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor? Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go
Okay.
ahead.
All in favor of this language, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Nay. All right, that passes. Janera, you had your hand up.
Yes, sir. I know we just got rid of leases, but I just need to give you a piece of information. All those wind farms, Spain and Netherlands owns all those. They're about to take over our grid right now, and every bit of windmill land, which is everywhere where I live, is leased. They don't own it. So leasing had a purpose here because, but they're taken over. They're not necessarily, they're hostile. They actually are. I know but I'm just saying the reason lease is so important is because we have people gobbling up Texas in the name of leases, and they have control of that land and our grid too. I would like to make the motion to reinsert, or is it too late?
It's too late. Yeah.
Okay.
You'd have to reconsider. Is there any further debate on this item? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor of adopting this final language for this platform priority, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Nay. All right, this passes.
A point of information, sir?
Say your point.
If I'm so blessed to be returned to permanent committee, could I do it then? Could I make a request like that in permanent?
You could.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, permanent committee starts completely fresh.
Thank you.
Okay, I've also been advised that Tom Oliverson may be wanting to come and speak to the committee. So I haven't seen him yet, though, but if he shows up, we may give him some time to do that. I think the next one up, is the next one up silver and gold? Gold. Is there a motion on language that we want to include here? Okay.
I want to say substitute language, but I have better language that I would like to put forward that's in the document now. So I'll move this better language.
Okay, so the language you would like, can you copy the language you'd like to move? Is there a second? This is.
Second.
All right, that has been seconded. So first look here, the only thing I see missing is, so I see a couple of things missing actually, because I think we're trying to incorporate the central bank digital currency items, which we've heard a lot about. And then also, we're leaving out the comptroller's office and the bullion depository, which is what Representative D'Orazio came and spoke to us about. So if we're wanting to empower that and kind of stick with what was approved through the.
Yes. Can we?
Yeah, can you leave it unhighlighted? Yeah. Yeah, so I think it is, there's a lot that's kind of removed from the bottom version.
The bottom version is too angry.
Debbie.
I get what he's trying to do with this. Could we not maybe make a little more dramatic title when we get to it?
Oh, we will. We'll do that at the end. Very end.
I think you could incorporate some of this
Right.
CBDC.
So if I look at the two of those, really, it's the first clause in the second one. You just take that, paste it up on the top of the first one.
I can speak to my motion, if
Go
that's
ahead.
okay. Just real quick, the concern about those who are proposing this other language is that in, I don't remember if it was a House or a Senate committee this past session, it actually died in that committee because the idea of establishing a gold or silver was interpreted as creating a legal tender, which is unconstitutional. So that's why they want to substitute with this language to kind of get around that and not die on constitutional grounds in the House or the Senate. Because they're afraid if you use the original language here, it'll just die again because of that.
So was this recommended by somebody? Okay. We'll go Dr. Malati, then Robert.
Just if the words legal tender are the issue, maybe he would entertain just changing that, for use in everyday transactions or something like that.
Yeah,
The committee thinks it's doable. I'll go with y'all's thoughts on that. I know that's just the biggest concern there.
Yeah, I just think the language on the bottom kind of cuts the heart out of the language at the top, right? Because the language at the top is about establishing a program versus the language at the bottom. It just says, like, it's a lot more general. But Robert?
I'm wondering if we're going to use the bottom language, whether it would be a good idea to separate the preparatory clause so it would be two separate sentences. So like, for example, it would say, instead of saying to empower Texas and then with all that comma, I would say something to the effect of Texans must be empowered to combat inflation and the ultimate police state tool of central bank digital currency, period. Then say Texas should recognize the natural right and continue the rest. So it's sort of like the idea would be, so we want to know what the overall goal is. That would be the first sentence. And then the second sentence is, what is the legislation that we want to add to that?
All right. Hans?
I speak against this amendment. I like to empower Texans to combat inflation. I think that's a good thing to keep with our overall priority. But putting in the police state, central bank digital currency is conflating the issue. And I like the top because it's more concise. So I'm asking people to vote against this, and then let's start and amend the one that we already had.
All right, is there any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none, we'll move into a vote on this main motion with the understanding that we can take up other language on this priority. All those in favor of the yellow language say aye. All opposed say nay. Nay. All right. Is there a motion to adopt the language on the top?
So moved.
All right, that has been moved and seconded. All right.
Point of information?
Say your point.
Is this the wording that our representative recommended?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yes, and this is what was in the ballot proposition also.
Can we leave the other wording up for reference?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, are there, Dr. Malati, and then I'll go to Jeff Frazier.
I wanted to just make sure I understood. Is the legal tender, is that a big issue? Maybe we should change just those words, and I would motion to say Texas Bullion Depository for use in everyday transactions.
I'll second that.
All right, so an amendment has been made to change for use as legal tender to for use in everyday transactions.
As legal tender.
All right, and that has been seconded. So is there any? Yeah. All right, Hans,
Just
debate.
point of information. I thought the legal tender was required so you don't pay capital gains.
Yes, it is.
That's what they said.
That's why you have legal tender.
What's your?
It's a form of legal tender. We are allowed to have legal tender.
Brady.
Point of information, the issue, I believe, in committee was that the constitutional issue is with creating a currency, not with necessarily the words legal tender. I think that's going to exist regardless of the language we adopt here. And so that's, again, I'm kind of asking the question on that, Matt, if I'm correct there, but I believe that is what I remember.
That's how the committee interpreted legal tender. I agree with you. Like, we're smart people.
Sure, and I don't know that, and I mean, and I'm fine with everyday transactions, but to the point of them, needing to be for legal tender, I'm not sure that changing it to everyday, I'm not sure that any change in language is going to stop that argument.
Do we then need to even explain for use in anything? Just period after depository?
Well, I think for use in everyday transactions has some explanatory power toward like what we're really intending here. I mean, you've got your literal gold card, and you go to Potbelly Sandwich Shop and
Point of information. Wasn't the original motion to add to empower Texans to combat inflation? The Texas legislature, wasn't that the original motion to move that up?
Well, the original motion was just the base language. I think there was an understanding that later there might be an attempt to
when you
amend
said
the
top,
language.
you meant the top
Yeah.
whole section. Thank
Okay,
you for
but
clarifying.
we do need to highlight for use in everyday transactions as, and actually unhighlight the top, keep that highlighted. Yeah. Okay, is there any further, Dr. Malati?
Can I modify mine and add the as legal tender back? Because that obviously is what people are saying. If not as a currency, but as legal tender, and we can, the legislature can hash it out so that we don't have the capital gains. Right.
All right, that motion has been, that amendment to the amendment has been made. Is there any objection to that?
Nope.
Hearing none, let's just unread highlight as legal tender.
Right. I see what you're saying.
All right, is there any further discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, oh.
Yeah, I'd like to say something. I think the original verbiage is simple, to the point, gets the point across, and we can play with the title to make it more attractive, I guess. But I don't think we need to discuss physical policies with this priority. Just make it simple and to the point like it was originally.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of adding the language in highlight, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. I think the ayes had it. I think y'all were a little louder, but it came down to who was louder. Jeff?
I'd like to make a motion to strike the language before establish and make that the beginning of the sentence with a capital E.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there any objection to doing that? Seeing none, it's done.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor of adopting this language, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. All right, that passes. And we have State Representative Tom Oliverson here, who wants to speak to the committee. Welcome. And yeah, if you could just come up here, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, anything you want.
Hey, hi everybody. I'm Tom Oliverson. I'm a state representative in the Texas House. I'm also running for speaker. You may have seen we got a new paradigm that we're trying to get going here. I think you'll like it. No Democrat chairs, no killing priorities, no deals, no delays, and we're going to stop punishing members' individual bills, make sure things are actually moving, so no more punishments. I was also the House author of the SB 14 and one of the main actual authors of the bill that ended the mutilation of children with this whole transgender nonsense and foolishness. So no more drugs, no more surgeries. And so I was downstairs registering, and somebody grabbed me and said, "Hey, you need to get up to the Legislative Priorities Committee because they're working on something with protecting children and stop sexualizing kids." So you got me at a bit of a loss because I haven't seen what you actually have, but I would just say that one of the things that we didn't get done last session that the Democrats cheered when it died, because it was one of those things where it got put on a calendar in a way that it was impossible for us to get to it and pass it, is what we call a detransitioner's Bill of Rights, which basically says that somebody who's been medically transitioned and now has horrible health problems and is trying to get some semblance of normalcy back, that health plans in Texas, if they paid to transition them and harm them, they have to pay to get them back to the other side. And so that's a really, really important thing. A lot of other states are taking that up. And so if that fits into the priority that you're working on, I just want to strongly encourage you that that is a huge priority for us next session. And related to that, I would add that the piece that SB 14 doesn't cover that we need to look at, and I think is related, has to do with mental health and social transitioning and things like that, where you have schools that are basically allowing kids to dress up and act like the opposite sex and refusing to even let the parents know that the child is experiencing symptoms of gender dysphoria. That has to stop. We all know that children are impressionable, and that young people can be trained and impressed upon and can be molded into growing up in a certain way. And you just have to wonder, what does that do to a young person who's seeking attention, who's maybe at a difficult point in their life, and suddenly they go from being Jack to Janie and wearing a dress, and suddenly their classmates are supportive and the teachers cheering for them and all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of damage that's being done. Even the CAS report, which is to date one of the best, most comprehensive systematic reviews, points out that social transitioning is not a neutral act. It preconditions children to grow up to think that they actually have a gender dysphoria problem, when in fact what they may have is just normal discomfort with the changes that their body's experiencing. Most of these kids, if you just leave them alone and provide them support, will grow out of it. Some won't, but most will. I'll close with this. I worked with a psychologist as we were working on this bill. He runs an organization called Do No Harm, and or maybe it's GenSpect. I always get them mixed up. But anyway, he said, as a therapist my job is not to affirm their identity. It's also not to reject their identity. My job is to help them go through a process of discovery to figure out who they really are. Friends, we need to stop this business of allowing mental health professionals to project their desires for who a kid ought to be and stop steering children in a certain direction. And for goodness sakes, don't do anything of the sort without informed consent and parental permission. Because I will tell you, I ran into a lot of parents last session when we were working on this bill that had no idea this was going on until they got a summons to the counselor's office at school, and in walks the psychologist who says, I've been meeting with your son for the last 6 months, and your son's actually a girl in a man's body, and you have two choices. You can either accept that and help them medically transition, or they're going to kill themselves. And friends, the literature never supported that statement. So we made great strides last session. We still have some work to do, so I just want to encourage you in the work that you're doing today. And if that fits into the priorities that you're working on, then God bless you for taking that on. That is really important. That's something that I commit to you. If I'm elected speaker, we're going to be taking all of your priorities very seriously. And we're not going to come home at the end of session and say, we ran out of time. But we are certainly going to prioritize protecting our kids. So thank you very much. If you have questions, I can sit in the back. I don't want to disrupt what you're doing.
Well, yeah, we'll get a couple from the committee members,
Okay.
just keeping in mind our rules about questions. I'll go to Davis and then Brett.
Yes, sir. Texas scorecard has your conservative rating at 55%. I surely would appreciate it if it was more over 80%. Why 55?
You'd have to look at what they scored me on. I don't know what they scored on. So
They tell you
Okay,
what
that's,
votes are.
you asked, okay, Brett.
So we've got 15 items that we're considering, and of
Yes,
course,
sir.
not all of those are going to make the cut. We're going to have the 8, right?
Yes, sir.
We tried to push a rule earlier that the SREC could push some of the priorities that didn't make the 8 so that they could elevate those. I don't know that that's going to pass, but my question to you is, would you be willing to at least let's look at those that didn't make the cut and then be able to say, you know what, I realize these didn't make the 8 priorities, but these were obviously very important to a lot of Texans. Let's really take a
Absolutely.
look and see if we can push these as well.
Absolutely. We can do that 2 different ways on the Republican side. The Speaker of the House can prioritize important things. I personally believe that your priorities should be my priorities. I don't think that I should have a separate list of priorities that has very little, if anything, in common with RPT's priorities.
Great.
But secondly, so does the caucus, and the caucus can have their priorities too. There's a lot of Republican House members that would like to see some very strong conservative bills passed that so far haven't gotten a chance. So.
I would, for what it's worth, I would encourage you to make a statement that's saying, look, I know that there's a lot of stuff, but we're definitely going to strongly consider all of the things that come out of the Legislative Priorities Committee, whether it made the 8 or not.
Yes, sir. I'm glad to look at it. Look, more is better. I think what you're saying is platform priorities. This is sort of the minimum we'd like to see you get done. That's not the sum total of all the conservative bills that there are to pass. I think it's ironic that some of my colleagues believe that they've already passed all of the conservative bills that there are to pass. I believe our work is not done. I believe there's much more work to do, and I'm excited to get to work. So,
All right, Don
thank
Hooper.
y'all.
Don Hooper has a question, and then
Yes, sir.
I think that'll be the last one.
Dr. Oliverson, so we're looking at trying to figure out the insurance
Yes.
on this. And have you thought about, I mean, because I know
Yes.
that Senator Middleton and I had talked about this on, we don't want to have our insurance dinged and all of our rates going up fighting over this. We want to put the burden back on the person that caused this to make them financially responsible for it. And I'm not sure how to do that, but I know you have a lot of bright minds over there. But it is a concern, and we need to get it through the Senate too. But I know you work with those guys as well. But
Yeah, Don, so if I may, I'll answer your question as quickly but also as completely as I can. So just keep in mind, folks, that when we look at the insurance marketplace in Texas, I'm the chair of insurance in the Texas House. I'm also the president of the National Council for Insurance Legislators. So insurance is great if you're a Jeffersonian Republican, because insurance is the only sector of our economy where states reign supreme, and there is no federal agency that tells us what to do. we do what we please in the insurance market as Texas, and that's why our insurance market is so much better than California's, because we're smart, to your point, about our policies. So only about 15% of the health insurance marketplace in Texas is subject to state regulation. The vast majority of it falls under what we call ERISA, which is self-funded employer plans. Those are subject only to federal law. And so that is the caveat, is that whatever we do tell insurance that they quote, have to do, just know that there will be people left behind from an insurance standpoint if that's all we do, because so much of it is self-funded, and there's no law that I can pass that tells Southwest Airlines what they can and can't cover under their insurance plan. That's their own business. But I think that the rub is here that insurance pays for transitioning. And what we're saying is we think parity is required. It's one thing if you say we're not paying for any of that. Okay, no problem. We won't mess with you. But if you're going to pay to let a child's body be ruined for the rest of their life, and I'm telling you, there really is no going back. You can't get back to where you were. When you remove those body parts, when you take those puberty blockers, you know, now they're showing that children under the age of 17 that are exposed to puberty blockers for as short a period as a couple of years have an increased risk not only of testicular atrophy, but of testicular cancer. You can't get that back. If you start taking your normal hormones again, it's not just going to magically recover. It's not a switch. You just turn puberty on and off. So these folks, unfortunately, need lifelong medical care. Some of them will be on hormones as detransitioners for the sex hormone that they were assigned at birth, literally for the rest of their lives. The damage is already done. And not to mention that there are other issues like infections and pain and incontinence and various things that can happen that are just tragic. These folks are lied to. Now, I would not, this is just me, my opinion, I would not be opposed to holding those medical practitioners accountable because, quite frankly, I think most of them have acted in bad faith. They've acted on bad science, and they continue to this day to show a dogged refusal to accept that the medical literature has changed dramatically and that the harm now clearly, from a literature standpoint, outweigh the good. They refuse to acknowledge that. In fact, there are places where they're setting up sanctuary hospitals and sanctuary states where you can come from out of state and still have all this stuff done. I've often thought that a little liability might go a long way.
All right, well, thank you so much.
I'll stand in the back. If anyone else has a question for me, I'm happy to take other questions in the back.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, going back to our list here. We've done all the way up to, so we finished silver and gold. Equal parenting, we did this already.
Sir,
Yeah.
may I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Since Mr. Oliverson is here, should we do the genitals and the gender? I meant the gender. I'm sorry, y'all. Dang, now the young children, the mutilation. Thank you.
I think we probably want to just stick to the order that we're doing. I think we've got a good rhythm on these confirmed items, and those are going to take a little bit longer to dig through. But the next one we have up is judicial accountability. And so for judicial accountability, is there a motion to take up what we have? Who did that? All right, Peyton, you've got to use a microphone. All right, so motion has been made to take up this text for judicial accountability. Is there a second? Second. All right, that has been seconded. So are there any, because I know we talked a lot about prioritizing this and kind of paring it down based on the testimony we've heard. Are there anyone want to make an amendment to take an effort at that?
Point of information.
Say your point.
You just said that we were going in the order that they are on this document, but haven't we just skipped equal parenting?
We already did equal parenting. Yeah, we did that one before. Of judicial accountability. All right. I don't have one of those from you. I've got let Texans run Texans from you.
Yeah, but it's under, I replied to your municipal district.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, no wonder I couldn't find it. All right, I'm going to forward this to Michael, and we can look at the alternate language on the screen.
What do they think?
Yes.
I really don't remember doing equal parenting because I had a motion on that, and I've been here the whole time.
Huh?
We go back to the language?
Yeah. Yeah, it's if you scroll up about 7 pages, you'll see the language that we adopted.
Point of information.
Say your point.
Didn't we take out ending no fault divorce? Those.
Yeah, that's not it. He's scrolling
okay.
to it. That's the old language. Yeah, we when the motion was originally made, discussing whether it would stay in the list, that was when we went ahead and did the entire thing. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So judicial accountability. Do we want to put the language Brett wrote kind of side by side or top and bottom with? Yeah, that's going to take up some room. All right. So, looking at these, beside each other, is there any objection to? Well, we have the original motion already made, and that has been seconded. So, would there be any objection to calling the question on that original language and taking up Brett's language as a starting point? All right. Is there any objection to moving to a vote on the original language? All right, seeing none.
The bottom one is Brett's language?
Top.
Top one. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was confused for a second.
Yeah. So we would, instead of starting with that giant wall of text, we would start with a more concise version down below. And then I think if we needed to, we could pull pieces and add as needed to build it out.
I would. So the only objection to that would be that what's in neither version is the asset forfeiture portion that we had already
we still
included.
need to add that in.
Yeah, okay. That was the only question. Otherwise, that's no objection.
All right. Is there? Okay. So first, we need to, because a motion was already made, we need to get rid of that, and then we'll go to your language. Okay, so all in favor of adopting the language on the top, say aye. All opposed, say nay. All right. So that fails. Make your motion. Yeah. All right. Brett, do you move to adopt the language on this language? Okay. The motion is made to adopt that language. Is that seconded?
I'll second.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So we'll go to Genera and then Dr. Malati.
I'd like to go after her, please.
Okay.
Thank
Dr. Malati.
Just from from the previous version, it looks like we've taken out the judges having to publish their rationale for their decisions. And then also, I guess, the composition of the court or the conduct panel or whatever that was called. And that's a big thing about who's composed of that. It was going to be public, like citizens. Is that? Okay. Then what about the rationale? They should publish the rationale for their decisions.
Are we asking questions or are we making a motion to change this language? Okay.
Well, we're discussing, so yeah,
Okay.
that is what is removed from the original version to the new version.
Okay.
Is the publishing the rationales.
I would like to make a motion.
Yes.
Okay. First, I would make a motion to remove the composed in part with citizens. In discussion with the judicial accountability folks after the things yesterday, this board is coming up for sunset review in 4 years. Major structural changes to the composition of a state board, especially one that's based on accountability and other things, getting that right takes time, and especially to when you're changing something to how it's going to be elected, how it's going to be composed. The sunset process is there for a reason, and there are lots of public hearings. There are public members on the sunset board who take part in that process. It is an extremely transparent process and a very thorough one. That is a very good idea, and I want to see it done, but it is not an item that should be on the list to absolutely get done this legislative session. The other items are transparency related. They're awesome, and they were in support of that idea of moving this. That part should be done in sunset, but the rest of that, including what we wanted to add in, is a priority item for this legislature.
Okay, so is there a second on that motion? Second. All right. All in favor? Okay, is there any discussion on this? Jeff.
I understand what you're saying, but it seems to me after a lot of the testimony that we heard and things that we've been told, that the fact that we have, the thin blue line of the judiciary predicting the judiciary.
Ma'am, over there, your phone call is extremely loud. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, I mean, getting to a place where we have some independence on this commission and we just don't have judges sitting in the place of other judges seems to me to be a key element of this. And I would hate to wait 4 years to get that accomplished.
Okay. Is there any? Go ahead,
If
Jeff.
I might, it would be I would be amenable to amend this motion to saying to include to include that in the sunset review process for the board, to make sure that it's brought up and it is worked over the next 4 years so that when the sunset bill hits, it is something that we are including in that process. But
So
to say this has to be a bill that like September 1, 2025, the board is made up completely of elected people is a huge move in 18 months, right?
So
That's the key.
would this be? Would anything happen on that in the next biennium anyway, like the sunset
Under
review
this language, it would
process?
have to. Right. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So again, like if we put this in this way, then any legislator who said no, this should be in sunset, would be open to censure, right? Like that's what I'm saying. Like this is either we mean the things that we're saying and these are all enforceable, or they're not. And so, if it would be nice if it could be done, that's one thing. But like either this board is composed of citizens by September 1st, 2025, or else, and that's too far.
Loretta.
I think we should suggest to the legislature that they start reforming this because it's a big issue. Not give them the out to wait until the sunset clause hits.
But
Scott,
Peyton.
I would agree with her that now's the time to start telling them. Otherwise, Sunset Commission, they'll just extend it the way it is and they ignore anything else. So now's the time to bring it up and start.
All right, done.
The Judicial Conduct Commission has been a huge problem for a long time. I mean, I had a case where a judge was removed for basically taking bribes, and I couldn't even figure out if it was in my case or not. And we've had criminal court judges removed. We've had the Chief Justice of our Supreme Court frustrated over his ability to get a judge removed from Harris County. I mean, we need to really send a strong message on how it's worded. I'm willing to work on it, but I mean it's the first sentence for a reason.
So I'll just point out right now, the State Commission on Judicial Conduct has public members already. So there are actually 10 public members, or there are 13 members, and so there is a 3 of them are actually, yeah, it looks like 3 of them are judges. No. 3 of them are judges the way you think of them. 1 of them is a county judge. 1 of them is a municipal court judge. There are 5 public members, and then there are 2 attorney members. 1 of the public members is actually a former SREC. So she was an SREC while she was serving on the commission, and now she is the nominee for Ernest Bales' old state house seat. Yeah, Janice Holt. So there already are citizen members of the Commission on Judicial Conduct. So yeah, so I'm kind of wondering is the request here to have more of them? Or, I don't know. So Spencer's got his hand up, then we'll go to Dr. Malati and Dan.
So I have 2 things. To answer your question, yes, the original intent was to have majority be citizens. But then secondly, speaking about the sunset part of it, if we do this now, the excuse will be, well, we won't touch any of that because sunset's coming up, where we can get most of this, have the transparency, which is why in the Sunset Commission last time it wasn't changed. So I was a part of the conversation that Jeff is referring to yesterday, and I think it was a very good conversation, so this needs to come out.
All right, I had Dr. Malati next.
I just had a question. When we're talking about citizens, I mean, that's kind of a weird word we're using. Are we saying like non-attorneys or non-judges, or, what are we, when we say that? Because everyone.
Yeah, public members. Brett.
In consultation with Jennifer there, she said the big problem is that the majority of the people on the board are the professionals, not the public. She'd like to see that swap, so that it's really the public who is in the majority rather than the professionals.
Okay. Because, yeah, if we're asking composed in part with citizens, then it's already composed in part with citizens. If you have 1 citizen, it's composed in part with citizens. So you can make a motion. Yeah.
So I make the motion then that is composed, I don't know, Scott wordsmith majority.
Okay. Compose.
Aye.
Scott, what about this? In part, the composed in part of citizens that are non-legal background. That way you really have it gets rid of all the lawyers and stuff. Composed in part with majority citizens of non-legal background.
Yeah, I think that might be a good way to do it. Compose.
Non-legal professional background. That way you get rid of everything.
Yeah, composed.
With majority of citizens of non-legal backgrounds.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out a way to say this that isn't like 20 words long, because I think there are still like little issues with that.
Point of information.
State your point.
Or point of order. Don't we have to vote the red down?
Well, we're working on that red language.
But you're working on deleting language. In other words, the motion is
that's
to
true.
delete.
So the motion is to delete it. Well, is there any objection to going to a vote on deleting it or not? All right, we'll go ahead and vote on that. All in favor of deleting that section, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
All right, it sounds like the yeses have it. So I'm glad we didn't spend 30 minutes on that. Okay, so now that we've made that change, I have another suggestion. Can we replace, I would entertain a motion to replace, after the word citizens, change, like highlight everything from that period through to be transparent? No, just the comma. Left. All right, change that to a colon. And then a space. Yeah. All right, is there a second? All right, that's been seconded. Is there any discussion on that change? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay.
I have
All right.
I have a motion.
Loretta.
I would like to remove like all of government from the first, after conduct, comma.
All right, that has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Oh, Robert? Okay.
I'd like to say the State Commission on Judicial Conduct, like all government entities and agencies.
Can't hear you.
Can you use the microphone?
Yeah, right now we're working on striking, like whether to strike that language or not. First we would need to vote on that. So is there any discussion on removing that wording? All right, seeing none, all in favor of removing like all of government, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, it's gone.
I'd like to make
I
a
love it
motion.
when we're deleting words.
Can I make a motion?
Yes,
Can I make a motion?
yes.
I'd like to change must be transparent to the public instead of to citizens.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, that's been seconded. Yeah, he's going to highlight. All right, is there any discussion on this?
I just, having worked in government myself, we quite often got open records requests from entities, not just individuals. And so I just think it makes more sense.
Okay. Is there any other discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead, Don. That was louder than anything you've said into a microphone.
How about, what the issue is that.
Into the microphone.
The issue is the citizens and the parties involved. The parties involved aren't able to find out what's going on. So maybe if we can figure out how to add the parties, that would help.
Jeff?
Yeah, let me be recognized for motion. I'd like to amend this amendment to just remove everything after transparent.
Between transparent and the colon, you mean?
Yeah, that's what,
Yeah.
everything in this thing after
That was kind of my thought too.
Yeah.
Is there a second on that? All right. Is there any discussion on removing everything after transparent, not including transparent? Yeah. All right. So any objection to changing the motion to being about removing all of that? All right. Seeing none. Oh, wait.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. The amendment is to remove everything that is highlighted hot pink. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. All right. Janera.
Okay, thank you. I did speak with the group, and they are just fine. Remember, brevity is very important. I'm not asking for a title change, but this could say judicial accountability and transparency. I know we're doing that later. But for brevity's sake, I would like to amend the body, the document, and say the State Commission on Judicial Conduct must be transparent. Okay, colon, they shall publish online for public access all complaints, comma, findings and conclusions And rationale of the commission. And utilize video and audio recordings for all cases, and strike everything else. They said they don't care, oh, I'm sorry, they don't mind if we remove the legalese about how much, when, and
Okay.
how long to retain.
Comma after findings, though.
And rationale with an E. Rationale with an E.
Yeah, and then I think you need another comma after commission.
I'm sorry, and I meant it shall publish.
Point of
Or
information.
just shall publish.
It.
Or just shall. Yeah, and.
Well, no, I think I think what the colon indicates is that these are the steps we're taking to guarantee transparency. So. They, yeah. I think the commission is a they. All right.
Point of information.
Say your point.
From what someone just said, I think we're missing the point. They intended for not to deal with the commission, but the fact you got so many lower courts, family courts that keep no record whatsoever other than just what they did, and so you really can't hold them accountable for misbehavior in the other courts. So there were two different issues here, and we're trying to turn them just to one, just to the commission, and we're abandoning the problem in some of these other courts.
Okay, so the issue is, well, yeah, then we've really scrambled the wording then, because if the issue we're trying to solve is that all courts should be publishing these findings, not just the Judicial Conduct Commission, then
That was how it was originally styled, and so we've completely changed the whole thing.
yeah, then we've really changed the meaning then. The original wording that we didn't take up. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so the complaints are to be retained and publicly available, but judges publish rationales for their final decisions, with staff added as necessary to assist, which, by the way, I've been informed would be pretty expensive. Require all court records be maintained for a minimum of 24 months after issue of final judgment, including audio and video record of all proceedings.
Oh. I'm sorry, we haven't made a motion yet on that, right? Because I had a couple of words to add.
Okay. I mean, you've made a motion. Is there a second here?
Well, I was going to, before somebody seconded it, I wanted to just stick in a couple of words that would save us some time.
Okay. What would they be?
That would be, and utilize video in that area. It should say, and allow, and utilize video and audio recordings for all cases and allow. We need to work in there. We want to allow access to the involved parties for that. So however you put that in there.
Point of information.
Go ahead.
Okay, say your point.
Yeah, if you understand how that commission works, there is nothing really to video or record. It's all by generally all by filings. They don't have. It's not like a norm.